New York City, the city that never sleeps, the city that never blinks, the city that swallows secrets like streets swallow shadows. And on one bright, unsuspecting afternoon, it stopped. Her name was Isabella Cruz, 25 years old, an art student with paint-stained fingers, eyes that never learned how to lie. She stepped out of the Metropolitan Fine Arts Gallery, sunlight catching her long brown hair, brushing her face like it knew the story that was about to unfold. Across the street, the hum of engines and chatter froze. A black Rolls-Royce gleamed under the sun, parked with precision. Standing beside it, a man who commanded the city without a word. A 35-year-old American Mafia boss, tall, sharp, every inch a don. Slick dark hair, tailored black suit, tattoos dancing along his neck and hands. The kind of elegance that whispered danger. His men waited behind him, shadows against sunlight, silent and obedient. And then he moved. In his hands, a thick bundle of cash. And with a single flick, dollars began to fly. Soaring, fluttering through the warm New York light, each bill catching the sun, each note a thunderclap in the city's rhythm. And his eyes, piercing, unwavering, locked on Isabella. The crowd, frozen. Pedestrians stopped mid-step. Car horns blared in the distance, but it didn't matter. Every heart in Times Square, in Midtown streets, in every corner where sunlight hit concrete, paused, witnessing the impossible. The Mafia boss throwing money, not at the crowd, not at chaos, but at her. Isabella's breath caught. Her hand instinctively reached out to shield her eyes from the cascading dollars. Her mind raced, curiosity, fear, disbelief all at once. He wasn't just showing power. He was declaring it. For her. And the city watched, because in that instant, New York stopped. Not for traffic, not for lights, not for celebrity. It stopped for love, danger, and sheer audacity. The wind carried the notes around them, wrapping the two of them in a private storm of paper and sunlight. A silent electric energy hummed between them, a promise, a warning, a question. Who is this man? The city seemed to ask. And what has he just done to this girl's life? And Isabella, standing there, heart pounding, paint-stained fingers trembling ever so slightly, realized that nothing would ever be ordinary again, because this was the scene that stopped New York. And the story had only just begun. New York doesn't forget. It remembers every whispered secret, every stolen glance, every headline that ever screamed across its streets. Isabella Cruz tried to keep walking, tried to ignore the eyes of the city, but the moment the Mafia boss threw those dollars, the world tilted. Every passerby stopped. Every camera flashed. Every taxi driver craned his neck. The city had a memory now, and she was at the center of it. Across the street, he watched her. His gaze wasn't about control. It wasn't about intimidation. It was about claiming, about marking her in a way the city would remember, in a way she would never forget. She looked back at him. Fear, curiosity, a spark she didn't understand yet. But he didn't flinch. He didn't move. Only his eyes spoke, unblinking, unyielding. A silent message that everything about her life was about to change. And just like that, the hum of New York returned. Taxis honking, people chattering, the distant wail of a siren, but it all sounded different. The city was alive, yes, but it was aware now. Aware that something dangerous, something magnetic had arrived. Every corner, every neon-lit window, every billboard reflected his power, and every reflection whispered to her, this city would remember him. And now, it would remember her too. The wind swirled the fallen dollars around her feet. She bent to pick one up, fingers brushing against crisp paper, the smell of ink and ambition filling her senses. In that moment, she realized she was standing at the threshold of a world she had only glimpsed in her dreams. Glamorous, perilous, intoxicating. New York has a memory, the city seemed to murmur, and it will follow you wherever you go. She straightened, heart racing. Her eyes met his again across the street. A silent understanding passed between them, a challenge, a promise, a question she couldn't yet answer, and somewhere in the distance, a taxi horn blared. A pigeon flapped its wings. The city moved on, but the story had just begun, because in a city that never sleeps, every glance, every gesture, every moment leaves a mark. She didn't run. She didn't scream. Isabella Cruz stood on the sidewalk, the fluttering dollars at her feet, and stared at him, the man who had stopped New York, the Mafia boss, the legend, the danger, the impossible. He stepped off the curb with a confidence that made the city itself pause again, each movement precise, deliberate, as if the streets themselves were following his lead. The sunlight glinted off the polished leather of his shoes, the sharp crease of his tailored suit cutting through the air like a blade. And in his hand, still a thick bundle of cash, he looked at her not like a stranger, not like a criminal, but like he'd been searching for her in every crowded street, every noisy cafe, every corner of the city that never slept. Her breath caught. She wanted to turn, to step back, to melt into the chaos of the crowd. But something about the way he looked at her, unflinching, magnetic, rooted her to the spot. "Isabella Cruz," he said, voice low but commanding. "I've been waiting for you." The world felt impossibly loud and impossibly quiet at the same time. Horns blared, shoes clicked against the asphalt. A street performer strummed a guitar somewhere behind them, but all Isabella could hear was the rhythm of her own heartbeat, pounding against the certainty that her life was about to change forever. He extended a hand. Not to intimidate, not to control, but to invite. And though every rational thought screamed at her to pull away, she hesitated, the faintest curve of her lips betraying curiosity. Intrigue, something dangerously like desire? He smiled, a flicker of warmth beneath the dawn-like authority, and for a brief second, the sharp edge of his world softened just enough to show her who he really was. Not the mafia boss everyone whispered about, not the man headlines screamed about. Just him, just Luca. She looked at his hand. She looked into his eyes. And in that moment, she realized she was no longer just Isabella Cruz, the art student stepping out of a gallery. She was a girl standing in the middle of a story that would never let her go. "Follow me," he said softly, almost a whisper meant for no one but her. And somehow, impossibly, terrifyingly, she did. The city resumed its clamor around them, indifferent to the silent exchange of two lives colliding in a single heartbeat. But Isabella knew, just as he knew, that nothing would ever be the same again. In a city of millions, they had found each other, and for better or worse, New York would never forget it. New York was a city of rules, some written, some whispered, and some only the powerful knew. And now, Isabella Cruz had stepped into a world where every glance carried meaning, every step could be watched, and every smile might hide a threat. Luca Moretti didn't walk beside her just to be seen. He walked beside her to guard, to test, and to claim, all at once. The money in his hand earlier had been more than a spectacle. It was a warning, a promise, a question. Are you ready for this life? Isabella could feel it, the electricity in the air, the hum of tension that vibrated through the city streets, the invisible rules she didn't understand yet, but could sense with every step. "You're not in the gallery anymore," he said softly, almost conversational, yet heavy with authority. "You're in my city now." She glanced up at him, trying to mask both fear and fascination. "And what does that mean?" He smiled, sharp, enigmatic, the kind of smile that made you forget danger existed but reminded you it always could. "It means," he said, letting the last words linger, "that the game begins." And in that moment, Isabella realized this wasn't just a mafia boss showing off. This was a man who played with the city like a chessboard. And she had just become a key piece. They walked past the familiar neon lights of the streets she knew, past honking taxis and crowded corners, but the world felt different, faster, sharper, full of invisible eyes and unspoken rules. He stopped at a quiet alley just off Fifth Avenue. No one followed. No one watched, but Isabella felt the pulse of the city tighten around them. "This is where most people turn back," he said quietly, "where fear makes them run." Her pulse quickened. But instead of running, she met his gaze. Something in her eyes, defiance, curiosity, courage, made him nod in approval. "Good," he said, letting a faint smirk curve his lips. "Because I don't do ordinary. And neither will you." The city hummed around them, oblivious to the silent contract being forged between a 25-year-old art student and a 35-year-old mafia boss, a contract written in stolen glances, fluttering dollars, and the unspoken promise that their lives were no longer their own. In New York, power isn't given. It's taken, and love is the most dangerous game of all. The city never stops testing you, and neither does the life Luca Moretti lived. Isabella had followed him willingly, maybe foolishly, maybe bravely, into a world where every handshake could hide a knife and every smile could carry a threat. Today, she would learn why. They arrived at a sleek, hidden office high above the streets, the kind of place that looked ordinary to anyone passing by. But to Luca's world, it was a throne room. Men in tailored suits waited like statues, their eyes sharp, unblinking, reading every gesture, every heartbeat. "This is your first test," Luca said, voice calm but firm. "And you'll either rise, or you'll step back." She swallowed, feeling the weight of the room press against her chest. Not just the power in the men surrounding her, but the unspoken power Luca wielded over everything in it. The air itself seemed to bend to his will. "I don't do tests," Isabella said quietly, trying to mask the tremor in her voice. "I do art," he smiled, amused, almost gentle. "Good, that's exactly why I chose you. You see things differently, but this isn't a gallery, Isabella. People aren't painted in brushstrokes. They're measured by choices and loyalty." The first challenge came quickly. A rival associate approached, hands folded, eyes sharp. Words were exchanged, tension so thick it could have cut the air. Isabella's pulse raced as Luca stepped forward, authoritative, commanding, and subtly protective. "Watch," he whispered, leaning close so only she could hear. "Everything you see is a dance. Learn the rhythm." She did. Every glance, every subtle movement, every unspoken threat, she studied it like a canvas. And slowly she began to understand the patterns, the hidden rules. When it was over, the rival associate bowed slightly and left. The men relaxed, but the lesson lingered in the air like smoke. Isabella turned to Luca. "I survived," she said, a mix of pride and disbelief. He looked at her, eyes softening, and yet dangerous still. "You did more than survive. You noticed. You learned. That's the first step to living in my world." She realized then that Luca's world wasn't just danger and power. It was a test of courage, of intuition, of the heart. And in that room, she felt something she hadn't felt before. A thrilling, terrifying sense of belonging. "You're different," he said quietly, his hand brushing hers ever so slightly. "And I like that. In New York, tests never end, but the ones worth taking are the ones that show you who you really are." And Isabella knew, without a doubt, that she would follow him into every challenge, every shadow, every storm, because she had already fallen into the game, and the game had claimed her heart. Isabella thought she had seen power. She thought she had glimpsed control, but she hadn't seen this. It started as a whisper. A message slipped under her apartment door. Unsigned, mysterious. At first she thought it was a joke, a prank. But then came the car parked too close outside her building, the shadowed figures that lingered at corners, the silent, observing eyes that seemed to follow her every step. And in that moment the city felt colder, darker, less forgiving. Luca noticed immediately. His eyes, calm and calculating, softened only when they met hers. "I told you," he said quietly, leaning close so only she could hear. "This life, it comes with its own rules, and one of them is this. Danger never sleeps." Her heart raced. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to hide, to leave the game she had willingly entered. But something in her chest refused to let her. Something or someone held her there. "Why me?" she asked softly, almost a whisper. "Why am I even in this?" He brushed a strand of hair from her face, his hand steady and warm. "Because you're different," he said. "You're brave. You notice. And most of all, you're mine now." She looked at him, seeing not just the Mafia boss that stopped New York, but the man behind the legend. His gaze, steady and intense, made the world shrink until it was just them, and the storm that threatened to break around them. That evening, Luca took her to the top of his building, far above the chaos of the streets. Neon lights painted the city in streaks of blue and gold. "This is your first real glimpse," he said, voice low, almost reverent. "The city doesn't sleep, and neither does the danger that comes with power." A single bullet whizzed past the glass below, smashing into the concrete far too close. Isabella flinched, her breath catching, heart hammering against her ribs. He held her hand, steadying her trembling fingers. "I'm not going to let anything happen to you," he promised, "but you need to understand, in my world, fear is always part of the rhythm. You can't escape it. You can only dance with it." She looked at him, unsure whether to be terrified or entranced. "Then I guess," she said quietly, lips trembling into a half-smile, "I'll learn to dance." In New York, danger walks beside desire. And sometimes, the closer you get to love, the sharper the shadows become. And in that moment, high above the city, Isabella knew she had fallen deeper than she ever imagined. And Luca, he knew too. "Welcome to my world," he whispered. Isabella had never seen this side of New York, not the one she studied in books or passed by in art galleries. This was a world of power, wealth, and danger, and for the first time, she was part of it. Luca Moretti led her through streets lined with lights that never seemed to dim. The air smelled of expensive cologne, street food, and asphalt heated from the afternoon sun. She clutched her purse a little tighter, unsure if she was walking into excitement or trouble, maybe both. "Are you ready?" Luca asked, glancing at her from the side. She nodded. "I think I am." They entered a private club, hidden behind an unmarked door, where velvet curtains and soft music filled the air. The place smelled of cigars and polished wood. People nodded respectfully to Luca as he passed, some smiling, some wary. Isabella realized that the respect he commanded wasn't just about money. It was about fear, influence, and reputation. "You'll see," he said quietly. "This world has rules, and you either follow them or you learn fast." A drink appeared in front of her, something colorful and sparkling. She took a careful sip, trying to keep her composure. The people around her moved with a confidence she had never seen before. Laughter, conversation, business deals being made without a single phone call. Luca leaned close, speaking just for her. "This is how it feels when the city bends for you," he said. When you have power, when you have people who follow your lead. She looked around, a mixture of awe and nervousness in her eyes. It was glamorous, exciting, but dangerous too. Every glance from someone in the room felt calculated. Every smile carried weight. "And me?" she asked. "Where do I fit in all this?" He smiled, a small, almost private smile. "Right here," he said, gently taking her hand. "And soon you'll know exactly how to move." The night went on. She observed. She learned. She laughed when she could, spoke when she needed to, and slowly realized that this wasn't just about being in a dangerous world. It was about understanding it. By the time they left the club, the city had changed for her. The same streets she had walked 100 times now looked different, sharper, brighter, alive with possibilities she had never imagined. "New York doesn't sleep," Luca said quietly as they walked back to the car. "And neither does the world I brought you into. But you survived your first night," she smiled, a mixture of relief and excitement. "Then I guess I can handle the next one." The next morning, Isabella woke with the city buzzing outside her window. Sunlight spilled across the floor, reflecting off the paint stains on her fingers, a reminder of the life she had before, a life that now felt distant. Luca arrived without knocking, as he always did. He carried 2 coffees, one black and one with cream, placing them on the table with a quiet precision that only he could manage. "You survived last night," he said simply. "Not everyone does." She smiled weakly, still feeling the adrenaline from the club. "I didn't just survive," she replied. "I watched. I learned. I'm trying." He studied her for a moment. Then he did something unexpected. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small envelope. "You need to see this," he said, voice low. Isabella opened it carefully. Inside were photos, not of her, not of them together, but of people Luca had known. People who had been hurt, threatened, sometimes eliminated. The evidence was precise, cold, and thorough. Her hands trembled slightly. "Why are you showing me this?" she asked. "Because," he said, looking her straight in the eyes, "if you're going to be in my world, you need to know it's not a game, and you need to decide if you can handle it." Isabella sat in silence, absorbing the weight of his words, the reality behind the glamour, the nightclubs, the expensive cars. This wasn't about wealth or attention. This was about survival, loyalty, and consequences. I don't know if I can," she admitted softly. He smiled faintly, placing a hand over hers, steady and reassuring. "Then learn, watch, listen, ask questions. You'll be ready faster than you think. But know this, once you see it, you can't unsee it. And there's no turning back." Her heart pounded, not from fear alone, but from the realization that she had already crossed a line. She was in his world. She was part of it, and part of her didn't want to leave. "I trust you," she said finally, looking up at him. He nodded, a silent acknowledgement that trust in his world was rare, fragile, and priceless. Some secrets can terrify you. Some can test your courage. But the first secret you survive is the one that tells you if you're truly ready to love and live in his world. And in that moment, Isabella understood. She was ready, or at least she hoped she was. Isabella thought she had a handle on Luca's world. She had survived the first night, learned the rules, and even glimpsed the darker truths behind his power. But she was about to learn that survival wasn't always a choice. It started with a note, pinned to her apartment door. Simple, typed, and chilling. "Stay away, or regret it." Her stomach tightened. Fear washed over her, the kind that makes your pulse race and your hands shake. She tried to convince herself it was a mistake, a random threat. But deep down she knew better. Luca arrived minutes later, his presence filling the apartment before he even spoke. "I saw it," he said quietly, voice calm but edged with steel. "And I need you to understand something. This isn't a warning. It's a promise. My enemies, they will test you, whether I like it or not." Isabella swallowed, gripping the edge of the table. I don't know if I can handle it," she admitted. He knelt slightly so he could meet her gaze, his hand covering hers. "You can," he said firmly, "because I won't let anything happen to you. But you need to be smart. You need to pay attention. And you need to trust me, completely." She nodded, even though the knot of fear in her chest refused to untangle. That evening, as they walked through Manhattan streets, shadows seemed to linger a little too long, cars drove a little too slowly past them, and every passerby felt like they could be watching, waiting. Isabella clung to Luca's arm, learning that trust wasn't just about believing him, it was about believing in herself. "You're stronger than you know," Luca said softly. "This is just the beginning. Every warning, every threat, it's shaping you, shaping us." And as they turned a corner, a figure watching from across the street vanished before Isabella could get a good look. But the message was clear. Luca's world was never far from danger, and now so was she. The first warning isn't just a threat. It's a test of courage, a measure of trust, and a reminder that in his world, nothing and no one is ever safe. Isabella realized then that fear and excitement were no longer separate. They were intertwined, and somewhere deep inside, she knew she was ready, or at least she hoped she was. Isabella had grown accustomed to the city's pulse, to Luca's world, and even to the danger that lingered at its edges. But nothing could have prepared her for the moment when danger stepped out from the shadows and into her life. She was leaving a small cafe in Soho, her canvas tote swinging lightly at her side, when the first sign appeared, a black SUV parked just a little too close to the curb. Engine running, tinted windows concealing the faces inside. Instinct screamed at her. But before she could act, a figure moved, blocking her path. A man with a cold expression and eyes that didn't belong to the city she knew. "Isabella Cruz," the man said, voice low, dangerous. "You need to come with us." Her chest tightened. Every step she had taken in Luca's world had taught her caution, but instinct was stronger than experience. She turned, ready to run, and in that instant the air shifted. Luca was there. Always there. He moved with precision, placing himself between her and the man. His hand went to the thick bundle of cash he always carried. Not to pay, but as a symbol, a warning. The man hesitated, the city sounds fading in the tension of the moment. "Back off," Luca said, calm, measured, but with an edge that could shatter glass. "She's mine." The man's eyes flicked to Isabella, then to Luca. Something unspoken passed between them, a recognition of power and danger. And then he backed away, slowly, disappearing into the city's chaos as if he had never been there. Isabella's heart raced. Her fingers trembled. And for the first time, the weight of Luca's world pressed on her. The danger, the intensity, the life she had chosen to step into. "Are you okay?" Luca asked, his hand brushing hers as he guided her to the sidewalk. I think so," she whispered, voice shaky but firm. He studied her for a long moment, and then he smiled, faint, reassuring, protective. "This was your first close call," he said, "and you handled it. Not by running, not by panicking, by trusting yourself, and by trusting me." She looked at him, understanding in a way she hadn't before. The city around them moved on, oblivious to the danger that had just passed. But for Isabella, the lesson was clear. In Luca's world, survival depended on courage, awareness, and a bond that went beyond words. The first close call doesn't just test your strength, it tests your heart. And Isabella Cruz had just discovered that hers was ready to face the danger, ready to face the world, ready to face him. The city had returned to its usual rhythm, but Isabella felt different. The close call lingered in her mind, but so did something else. The way Luca had stood for her, unwavering, fearless. It wasn't just protection. It was attention, focus, care. And it was something she hadn't expected to feel so strongly. That evening, they walked along the Hudson River, the water catching the last rays of sunlight, the skyline painted in soft oranges and pinks. The city buzzed faintly behind them, but for a moment, it was just the two of them. "Isabella," Luca said softly, stopping to face her, "there's something I need you to know." Her heart skipped. She nodded, unsure of what he would say, though deep down, part of her hoped she already knew. "I don't usually do this," he continued. "I don't usually let anyone in, but with you, it's different. I can't stop thinking about you. I can't stop wanting you close, not just safe, but near me." Her breath caught. She searched his eyes, dark, intense, but vulnerable in a way he rarely allowed anyone to see. "Luca," she whispered, unsure of how to put words to the whirlwind inside her. I feel the same way." A pause. A moment suspended in time where neither dared to blink, where the city itself seemed to hold its breath. "You have no idea what you're stepping into," he said, voice low, yet soft. "But I promise you, I'll do everything I can to keep you safe, and I'll do everything I can to make you happy." She reached for his hand, trembling slightly, but not withdrawing. In that simple touch, she felt trust, connection, and the unspoken promise of something deeper than fear or power. "I don't want to run," she said quietly. "Not from you. Not from this." Luca's gaze softened, and for the first time, a genuine smile curved his lips. "Then you won't," he said. "We'll face this together. The danger, the city, everything, together." The sun slipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the river, over the skyline, over them. For a brief, perfect moment, New York wasn't just a city of power and danger. It was a city where two hearts had finally spoken the truth. Trust in Luca's world was rare. And Isabella was about to learn why. It started with a text, simple, almost innocent, from someone she thought she could trust. A friend from her art school, someone who knew nothing of Mafia rules, nothing of danger. But the message was troubling. Be careful with him. "You don't know who he really is." Isabella froze, heart racing. Could she trust him? Had she misjudged everything? She confronted Luca that evening. The city lights flickered across his face as he looked at her, calm, collected, yet unreadable. I got a warning, she said quietly, holding her phone like a fragile lifeline. Someone said I shouldn't trust you. Luca's jaw tightened. For a moment, she saw the man behind the dawn, the man who carried the weight of his world in silence. And you came to me? He asked, voice low. I don't know who else to go to, she admitted. He stepped closer, placing a hand on hers, steadying her. Isabella, he said, eyes locked on hers. You have to understand something. In my world, betrayal isn't always clear. Sometimes it comes from the people you love. Sometimes it comes from the people who seem harmless. But there's one thing you can always know. She looked at him, breath held. I will never betray you, he said firmly. No matter what happens, no matter who tries, you can trust me. Tears pricked her eyes. Not from fear, but from relief, from understanding, from the raw honesty in his words. She had entered a world filled with shadows, lies, and danger, but for the first time, she felt a solid truth beneath her feet. I trust you, she whispered. Completely. He smiled faintly, a flicker of warmth in his eyes, and drew her into a protective embrace. The first betrayal is never easy to face. It shakes your trust, questions your judgment, and reminds you that love in a world of danger isn't simple. But the first betrayal also proves one thing. If you survive it together, nothing else can break you. Isabella had thought she knew Luca. She had seen his power, his control, even the rare moments when he let his guard down. But she hadn't seen everything. Not until tonight. They were in his apartment, high above the city, the lights of New York sparkling below like a sea of fireflies. Luca handed her a folder, thick with papers and photographs. She opened it carefully, curiosity mixed with a hint of fear. Inside were images from his past, family she hadn't known existed, people who had shaped him, people he had lost. Letters written in his own hand, secrets kept for years, decisions made that had changed the course of countless lives. Isabella's hands trembled as she read. The man she had grown to care for wasn't just a mafia boss. He was a survivor, a protector, and someone who carried guilt and love in equal measure. Every action, every choice, now made sense in a way it never had before. Luca watched her closely, his expression unreadable. I didn't show this to anyone, he said quietly. Not because I wanted to hide it from you, but because it's dangerous. Some truths aren't meant to be shared lightly. Isabella looked up, meeting his eyes. She saw vulnerability there, a side he had never shown anyone else. Why are you telling me now? She asked softly. Because you need to know who I really am, he replied. Not just the boss, not just the man who throws money in the streets, but the man who carries everything he can't lose, the man who will fight to protect the people he loves. Her heart swelled with understanding and something deeper, respect, trust, and an unexpected warmth. She realized that this revelation didn't make him weaker. It made him human, and it made her love him even more. In that quiet moment, the city below them seemed to fade. The noise, the danger, the shadows, none of it mattered. What mattered was the truth between them, the trust they were building, and the knowledge that no matter what came next, they would face it together. And Isabella knew that this first revelation was just the beginning of a bond that would shape both their lives forever. The streets of New York were never quiet for long, and tonight was no exception. Isabella and Luca walked through an alleyway, the neon lights from the city casting sharp reflections on the wet pavement. A sense of unease hung in the air, the kind that made every shadow feel alive. Then they appeared, men they didn't recognize, faces hard and eyes cold, stepping out of the darkness with purpose. Luca's hand instinctively went to Isabella's, gripping it firmly. She felt the tension, the weight of danger pressing against them both. Stay behind me, Luca said calmly, his voice steady, but carrying the authority of someone used to command. The men approached, voices low, threatening, each word deliberate. Isabella's pulse raced, but she stayed close, trusting him, feeling the strength of his presence. You've been warned, one of them said, a smirk on his face. He can't protect you forever. Luca's eyes narrowed, scanning the group, calculating every angle. Then he stepped forward, confident, unshaken, every movement precise. You're here for the wrong reason, he said, voice firm. Leave now, or you'll regret it. The standoff lasted only moments, but it felt like hours. Isabella realized that this wasn't just a threat to Luca. It was a test of her courage, too. And in that moment, she didn't step back. She stayed side by side with him, ready to face whatever came. The men hesitated. Luca's calm, unyielding stance told them everything they needed to know, that he wouldn't be intimidated, that he would protect what mattered to him. Slowly they retreated, disappearing into the night, leaving only the echo of their footsteps behind. Isabella exhaled, her hands trembling slightly, and Luca turned to her, letting his protective arm settle around her shoulders. This is the life, he said quietly. The dangers, the threats, they're part of it. but so is trust, so is loyalty, and so is love. She looked up at him, eyes wide, and for the first time truly understood what he meant. The danger was real, but so was the bond they shared. And nothing, no threat, no enemy, could break that connection. "I'm not afraid," she said softly. "Not when I'm with you." Luca's lips curved into a rare, satisfied smile, and together they stepped back into the night, ready to face whatever came next, side by side. Isabella never imagined she would be part of something like this. She had walked the streets of New York, studied art, and dreamed of quiet galleries. But tonight, she was stepping into a world few outsiders ever saw, Luca's world, a place of power, strategy, and secrets. Luca handed her a small earpiece and a folded note with instructions. His gaze met hers, steady and unwavering. "This isn't just about observation," he said. "You'll be part of it, but you need to follow directions exactly. One mistake and it could get dangerous." Her heart raced. She nodded, trying to mask her fear with determination. The mission was simple in concept, but layered with risk. They were meeting a contact who could provide crucial information about Luca's rivals, and Isabella's role was to be the distraction, the observer, and the messenger, a test of both courage and trust. As they approached the location, a dimly lit warehouse near the waterfront, she could feel the tension tighten in her chest. Shadows moved, figures whispered, and the hum of distant traffic seemed unnaturally loud. Luca's presence beside her was a constant anchor, his hand brushing hers briefly, reassuring her without words. "Remember," he said softly, "stay calm, trust your instincts, and stay with me." Inside, the air smelled of metal and oil. Isabella observed silently, memorizing faces, movements, and the flow of conversation. When it was time to act, she delivered the message precisely as Luca had instructed, her voice steady despite the adrenaline surging through her veins. The contact nodded, understanding immediately, and in a swift, silent exchange, Luca secured the information they needed. The mission was over before it had truly begun, yet Isabella felt a rush she had never experienced, a mix of fear, excitement, and pride. "You did well," Luca said once they were back on the street, the city lights reflecting in his eyes. Not many would have stayed calm under pressure. She smiled, her chest still pounding. "I had you guiding me," she admitted. He shook his head, a hint of a grin playing on his lips. "You guided yourself. I just showed you the way, and now, you know what it's like to be part of my world." For the first time, Isabella realized the depth of their bond. It wasn't just about romance or attraction. It was trust, respect, and the understanding that they would face everything together, danger, power, and uncertainty. And as they walked back into the night, side by side, she knew this was only the beginning. The streets were quiet now, the chaos of the city muted under the soft hum of streetlights. Isabella walked beside Luca, her hand brushing against his, but the adrenaline from the day still pulsed through her veins. She had survived the mission, followed every instruction, and proven herself in a way she hadn't imagined possible. Yet, beneath the surface, a quiet fear lingered, a fear she hadn't yet shared. "Luca," she began, her voice soft, almost hesitant. "Can I tell you something?" He glanced at her, eyes steady, waiting. "Always," he said. She took a deep breath, her chest tightening. "I'm scared," she admitted. "Scared of this life, scared of making a mistake, scared that one day something might happen to me. To us." He stopped walking, turning to face her. His hands rested gently on her shoulders, grounding her in a way only he could. "Isabella," he said softly, "fear doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. It shows you care. It shows you understand the stakes." Tears pricked her eyes, and she let them fall, releasing the tension she hadn't realized she was holding. I don't know if I'm strong enough," she whispered. He shook his head, a small, reassuring smile on his lips. "You are," he said firmly. "Every step you've taken, every challenge you've faced, you've proven it. You survived the first test, the first warning, the first mission. And each time you've grown stronger." Her gaze met his, searching for reassurance, and found it in the quiet certainty of his eyes. "I won't let anything happen to you," he continued, "but you need to know something else. It's okay to be scared. It's okay to lean on me. That's what we do, together." Isabella nodded, a sense of relief washing over her. The fear hadn't vanished, but it felt lighter, shared, and somehow manageable. She realized that courage wasn't the absence of fear. It was facing it with someone you trusted by your side. "I trust you," she said quietly, her voice steadier now. "Completely." He drew her into a gentle embrace, holding her close as the city continued its restless rhythm around them. And for the first time, Isabella understood that fear, when shared, could become a bond, one that could make love stronger, trust deeper, and hearts unbreakable. After the tension, the missions, and the tests of trust, Luca wanted a night that was theirs alone, a night to celebrate what they had survived together. He led Isabella to a rooftop terrace overlooking the city, where soft lights twinkled like stars above and below. A small table was set with champagne, fruit, and a simple cake. No extravagance, just a quiet acknowledgement of their victories and of each other. "For us," Luca said, raising a glass. His eyes held a warmth she had rarely seen, softening the hardness of the man the city knew as a Mafia boss. Isabella smiled, the tension of the past days slowly melting from her shoulders. "For us," she echoed. They clinked glasses, and in that moment, the city seemed to fade. The dangers, the warnings, the shadows of Luca's world all existed outside this rooftop. Here, it was just them, two people who had learned to trust each other, to fight together, and to care in a world that didn't often allow for softness. "I didn't think I could ever feel normal," Isabella admitted softly, "even for a moment." Luca reached across the table, taking her hand. "Normal isn't what we have," he said, a small smile tugging at his lips. "But happiness is what we make it, and tonight I want you to feel it, because you deserve it." They laughed softly, shared stories of their pasts, and for a brief while, Isabella forgot the danger that always hovered at the edges of their lives. She felt light, free, and deeply connected to the man beside her. "Thank you," she whispered, squeezing his hand, "for trusting me, for letting me be part of your world." He shook his head, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "No," he said gently. "Thank you. You've made me see the world differently. You've made me feel something I didn't know I could feel, and that's worth more than anything else." As the city lights sparkled below, they stayed close, savoring the quiet, the connection, and the knowledge that whatever challenges came next, they had each other. "To us," Isabella said, smiling. "To us," Luca replied. And for that night, the chaos of New York felt far away. For once, the world could wait. They had each other, and that was enough. Just when Isabella thought they could enjoy a brief moment of peace, the city reminded them that danger never truly sleeps. It started with a single call, a hushed voice, barely audible, warning Luca that someone from his past had resurfaced. Someone who wasn't satisfied with retreating quietly. They were coming for him, and anyone close to him would be at risk. Luca's expression hardened immediately. He didn't speak much, but Isabella could feel the shift in the air, the way his presence became sharper, more alert. Every instinct he had, honed over years, was on high alert. "Isabella," he said quietly, taking her hand, "you need to stay close to me. No matter what happens, don't let go." Her heart pounded. She had faced danger before, but this felt different. This was personal, targeted, and relentless. They moved through the city together, streets and alleys now familiar, yet suddenly threatening. Eyes watched from shadows, and every passing car could hide a threat. Isabella clung to Luca, feeling both fear and exhilaration, the kind of fear that sharpens every sense and makes trust feel sacred. "We've faced threats before," she whispered. "But this feels bigger." Luca's gaze softened briefly, resting on her with an intensity that spoke volumes. "That's because it is," he said. "But we've grown. You've grown. And tonight, we face it together." A black SUV appeared ahead, tires screeching slightly as it came to a stop. Figures emerged, armed and ready, but Luca didn't falter. He positioned himself in front of Isabella, his hand holding hers firmly. The standoff was tense, but brief. Luca's calculated presence, his reputation, and the silent understanding of danger he commanded caused the attackers to hesitate, and when they realized they couldn't break his focus or intimidate him, they retreated into the night, leaving only the echo of threat behind. Isabella exhaled, trembling but resolute. We made it," she said, voice shaking but proud. Luca looked at her, a rare softness breaking through his controlled exterior. "We always will," he said simply. "As long as we face it together, no threat can touch what we have." In that moment, Isabella understood the truth of their bond. Danger was inevitable in his world, but trust, love, and loyalty were stronger than fear, and for the first time, she felt fully certain they could face anything together. The city that never sleeps seemed quieter that morning, as if New York itself was taking a breath. Isabella walked beside Luca along the streets they had come to know so intimately, sunlight bouncing off the glass towers, casting a warm glow over everything. The danger, the missions, the threats, they were still part of Luca's world. But for the first time, Isabella felt the balance between fear and freedom, between caution and love. She had survived, she had learned, and she had fallen in a way that felt inevitable. Luca stopped at a small park, where the trees swayed gently in the morning breeze. He turned to her, his hand brushing hers, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "You've grown stronger," he said, "braver, wiser, and through it all, you've stayed true to yourself." Isabella looked up at him, feeling the depth of his words in her chest. "I couldn't have done it without you," she replied softly. He shook his head, a rare warmth in his eyes. "No," he said. You guided yourself. I just gave you a hand when you needed it. And you never let go of trust. Or of love. That's what makes you remarkable. The city moved around them, oblivious to the quiet moment of triumph. But for Isabella and Luca, the world had changed. They had faced threats, betrayal, fear, and danger, and they had survived together. They had grown stronger, closer, and more certain of the bond that tied them. Luca took both her hands in his, looking deep into her eyes. "This is our life," he said. "It won't always be easy, but it will always be ours. And I promise. I'll protect you, love you, and be by your side, no matter what comes next." Isabella smiled, her heart full, her fears quieted by the certainty of his words. "Then I'll stay," she said, "by your side, always." He pulled her close, and they stood there together, the city stretching endlessly before them, a world full of possibilities and challenges, but also full of love. "To us," he whispered. "To us," she echoed. And in that moment, Isabella realized that life in Luca's world wasn't just about power or danger. It was about trust, courage, and love, the kind of love that could withstand anything. The city kept moving, the streets kept buzzing, but for them, time had paused. And for the first time, they truly knew peace, happiness, and a future they would face together. If you enjoyed Isabella and Luca's story, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and join our channel for more thrilling romance, suspense, and mafia drama. Trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next. The story isn't over yet. Subscribe now and don't miss part 2 of Isabella and Luca's thrilling mafia romance. The danger, the drama, and the passion continue, or a shorter version. Want to see what happens next? Subscribe now for part 2 and stay with Isabella and Luca as their story unfolds.